March 26, 2012. At 35,756 feet below the Pacific Ocean, filmmaker James Cameron's submersible recorded metallic sounds in the Mariana Trench, rhythmic and deliberate, echoing through water where pressure exceeds 16,000 pounds per square inch, and no light has existed for millions of years. Scientists had declared this depth too hostile for complex life, yet something down there was making noise, and when unmanned sensors were sent to investigate, they came back covered in deep scratch marks that metallurgists confirmed could only have been made by something biological. What lies 7 miles beneath the ocean that we were never supposed to find? Challenger Deep sits at the bottom of the Mariana Trench in the western Pacific Ocean. It is the deepest point in all of Earth's oceans. The distance from the surface to the bottom measures 6.8 miles straight down. If you placed Mount Everest inside the trench, its peak would still be more than a mile underwater. The pressure at the bottom reaches 1,086 bars, which means every square inch of surface area experiences over 16,000 pounds of crushing force. A human body would be compressed to nothing in less than a second. The temperature hovers between 1 and 4 degrees Celsius in absolute darkness that has never been touched by sunlight. For most of human history, we believed nothing could survive down there. Only 2 manned expeditions had ever reached the bottom of Challenger Deep. The first happened in January 1960 when Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh descended in a submersible called the Trieste. They spent 20 minutes on the ocean floor and reported seeing what looked like flatfish and shrimp moving through the sediment. When they surfaced and told scientists what they had seen, most marine biologists dismissed their claims as impossible. The pressure was too great, they said. The conditions were too extreme. Whatever Piccard and Walsh saw must have been debris or shadows or equipment malfunction, because complex life could not exist at those depths. 52 years passed. The Mariana Trench remained untouched, unexplored, wrapped in mystery and crushing darkness. Then in March 2012, filmmaker James Cameron made the second manned descent to Challenger Deep. His submersible, the Deep Sea Challenger, was equipped with cameras and audio recording equipment far more advanced than anything available in 1960. Cameron spent hours at the bottom, filming the landscape, collecting samples, documenting what he found. When he returned to the surface, he brought back footage that challenged everything scientists thought they knew about the deepest parts of the ocean. The cameras had captured bioluminescent creatures glowing in the darkness. They recorded microbial mats covering the seafloor and geological vents releasing superheated water into the freezing deep. But more disturbing than anything visible on camera were the sounds. Cameron's audio equipment picked up noises that should not have existed at that depth. Metallic clanging, low moans that seemed to travel through the water with intention. Audio engineers who analyzed the recordings described some of the sounds as resembling whale song played backward. The frequency range fell between 20 and 200 hertz, perfectly within the range of human hearing. Yet, sound should not travel in recognizable patterns at those depths. The pressure distorts everything. The darkness absorbs everything. And yet, something down there was making noise. But Cameron's expedition was not the first to encounter strange evidence from the Mariana Trench. 3 years earlier, in 2009, Dr. Taishi Nakajima, a marine geologist from Japan, had deployed a series of unmanned sensors into the trench to measure seismic activity. The sensors were built from titanium alloy, designed to withstand the crushing pressure and collect data for months at a time. Dr. Nakajima sent 3 sensors down to 32,000 feet. All 3 went dark within weeks. No signal, no data transmission, just silence. Months later, one of the sensors was recovered. When Dr. Nakajima's team pulled it from the ocean and examined the hull, they found something that made no sense. The titanium surface was covered in deep parallel scratches. The grooves measured between 4 and 7 millimeters deep. They ran in straight lines across the metal, evenly spaced, deliberate. Dr. Nakajima sent the sensor to metallurgists at Tokyo University for analysis. The scientists studied the scratches under microscopes, tested the depth and angle of each mark, analyzed the force required to create such damage. Their conclusion was clear and impossible to ignore. The scratches had been made by something biological, not geological activity, not debris, not equipment failure. Something living had clawed at the titanium hull with enough sustained force to leave permanent marks at a depth where a human being would be crushed instantly. The official explanation from marine research institutions remained unchanged. The Mariana Trench was a lifeless abyss, too deep, too dark, too hostile for anything complex. The scratches were probably caused by rare geological events. The sounds Cameron recorded were likely unusual acoustic phenomena created by underwater volcanic activity. Everything could be explained by science we simply did not yet understand. Nothing anomalous was happening down there. But Dr. Nakajima knew what he had seen. The scratches were not random. They were not accidental. Something at 32,000 feet below the ocean had examined his sensor, touched it, marked it, and left evidence that should not exist. The pattern of strange discoveries from the Mariana Trench stretched back further than most people realized. When Piccard and Walsh made their descent in 1960, their report of seeing fish-like creatures at the bottom was not simply dismissed. It was actively disputed by the scientific community. Marine biologists insisted that vertebrate fish could not survive at such depths because their bodies would collapse under the pressure. The swim bladders that allow fish to control buoyancy would be crushed. The cellular structure would fail. Therefore, whatever Piccard and Walsh claimed to see could not have been fish. The official record was amended to state they had likely misidentified debris or sediment disturbances. But in 1996, a Japanese research vessel named Kaiko sent unmanned probes deeper into the trench than ever before. The cameras captured footage of entire colonies of amphipods, shrimp-like creatures, thriving at extreme depths. These were not simple microorganisms. They were complex animals with segmented bodies, functioning organs, and clear behavioral patterns. They moved with purpose, gathered around bait, and demonstrated awareness of their environment. Scientists had to revise their assumptions. Life could exist in the Hadal Zone, the deepest parts of the ocean, but it would be limited to small, primitive creatures adapted to the crushing pressure. Then came Dr. Nakajima's sensors in 2009. The scratches suggested something larger, something capable of exerting significant force. When James Cameron made his descent in 2012, his cameras recorded images that deepened the mystery. At one point during the dive, Cameron later described in an interview with National Geographic, he saw movement at the edge of his lights. Not the drifting motion of something carried by current, but deliberate movement. Something swimming or crawling, just beyond the reach of visibility. He said he had the distinct feeling he was being watched. The hair on his arm stood up inside the submersible, even though he knew that was impossible through all the layers of pressure-resistant material separating him from the water outside. In 2014, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration deployed 7 autonomous drones into the Mariana Trench. These were advanced machines, equipped with collision avoidance systems, emergency ascent protocols, and redundant communication arrays. 2 of the 7 drones failed to return. No distress signals were received, and no debris was recovered. The drones simply vanished at depths between 28,000 and 31,000 feet. NOAA issued a brief statement attributing the loss to equipment failure due to extreme conditions, then quietly stopped sending autonomous vehicles into the deepest parts of the trench. That same year, Dr. Alan Jameson from the University of Newcastle conducted a series of studies focused on hadal ecosystems. His team deployed bait traps at various depths to study what kinds of organisms lived in the trench. Most of the traps functioned as expected, attracting amphipods and other small creatures. But trap number 7, deployed at 29,800 feet, came back empty, despite being intact when it was sent down. When Dr. Jameson's team examined the trap, they discovered the latch mechanism had been opened. Not broken or corroded, but opened. The design required manipulating a specific sequence to release the door. Something had examined the trap, understood it was a container, figured out how to access it, and opened it from the outside. Dr. Jameson's research notes, which were later leaked to the Guardian newspaper, contained a disturbing observation. He wrote that the trap had been opened with what appeared to be intentional precision, suggesting not just curiosity, but problem-solving ability. Whatever accessed that trap possessed a level of intelligence that should not exist at those depths. In 2016, a Chinese submersible filmed something that had never been documented before. At 27,000 feet, the cameras captured footage of a translucent, eel-like organism estimated to be 8 feet long. Its body undulated through the water with smooth, controlled movements. Marine biologists who reviewed the footage could not identify the species. It did not match any known deep-sea creature. The body structure, the size, the translucent skin, none of it fit existing classifications. The Chinese research team submitted their findings to international marine biology journals. The papers were accepted, but generated little media attention. Scientists noted the discovery and moved on, filing it away as evidence of biodiversity we had not yet cataloged. But behind the scenes, institutional resistance was growing. In 2015, the United States Navy classified portions of the Mariana Trench as restricted zones. The official reason given was nuclear waste monitoring, ensuring that old disposal sites were not leaking radiation. Multiple research teams applied for permits to conduct civilian studies in the trench between 2013 and 2017. Most applications were denied without detailed explanation. The few that were approved came with strict limitations on depth, duration, and the type of equipment that could be deployed. NOAA's budget for deep-sea exploration was cut by 40% in 2016, forcing the agency to scale back or cancel planned missions. Dr. Jameson went public with his findings in 2014, proposing that the Mariana Trench was not just deep ocean, but a completely isolated biosphere. Evolution had taken a different path down there, producing organisms adapted to conditions we considered incompatible with complex life. The pressure, the darkness, the cold. These were not barriers. They were the environment, and whatever lived in the trench had millions of years to adapt to it perfectly. Some of those adaptations might include size, intelligence, and behaviors we would not recognize as natural because we had never encountered anything like them before. Then in 2017, a Russian research team detected something that changed everything. They recorded sustained electromagnetic pulses coming from the trench floor at a depth of approximately 34,000 feet. The pulses occurred in regular intervals, exactly 43 seconds apart. Geological activity produces electromagnetic signals, but they are random, chaotic, driven by the movement of magma or tectonic plates. These pulses were rhythmic, consistent, repeating with mechanical precision. The Russian team spent weeks verifying their equipment, checking for errors, ruling out interference from surface vessels or underwater cables. The pulses were real. The lead researcher, Dr. Yuri Bogdanov, prepared a paper detailing the findings. He submitted it for peer review to several international journals. Before any of the journals could publish, Dr. Bogdanov died in a car accident in Moscow. The circumstances were ruled accidental. The paper was never published. The data disappeared from academic databases. When journalists tried to follow up on the story, they found that Dr. Bogdanov's research team had been dissolved and the surviving members reassigned to different projects. No one wanted to talk about the electromagnetic pulses. No one wanted to explain why a regular, repeating signal was coming from the deepest, darkest, most isolated place on Earth. Before 2012, the Mariana Trench was a geographical curiosity mentioned in textbooks and documentaries, but rarely studied in depth. Funding for deep-sea research was limited. Public interest was minimal. The ocean floor seemed less important than space exploration, less urgent than climate change, less exciting than searching for life on other planets. After James Cameron's expedition and the wave of strange discoveries that followed, everything changed. Suddenly, Chinese, Russian, and American military vessels were conducting expeditions into the trench. Research permits that used to take months to process now required years of international approval. Civilian scientists found their applications rejected, while government-contracted research missions multiplied in secret. The official explanation remained consistent. The Mariana Trench was simply an extreme environment that we did not yet fully understand. Unusual geological activity combined with previously undiscovered deep-sea life forms created phenomena that seemed strange only because we lacked context. There was nothing anomalous happening. There was nothing to fear. Science would eventually explain everything once we developed better technology and conducted more research. But the alternative theory, whispered among marine biologists and geologists who had worked in the trench, told a different story. They believed the trench was not just deep, but connected to something larger. Networks of thermal vents, subterranean ocean systems, possibly hollow pockets in the Earth's mantle that housed ecosystems completely separate from the known biosphere. Some researchers speculated that these isolated environments had existed for millions of years, allowing evolution to progress along paths we could not predict or understand. James Cameron gave several interviews after his 2012 dive. In one conversation with National Geographic, he described moments at the bottom of the trench where he felt certain he was being watched. He said the lights would illuminate something just at the edge of visibility, and it would move, not drifting with the current, but deliberately, as if reacting to his presence. He could not explain it. He could not prove it. But the feeling stayed with him long after he returned to the surface. Other crew members from various expeditions reported similar experiences. A sense of being observed, equipment malfunctioning at specific moments, sounds that seemed to respond to their movements, growing louder when they activated machinery and falling silent when they stopped. In Dr. Jameson's leaked research notes, the description of bait trap number 7 became even more disturbing upon closer examination. The trap had been deployed intact, sealed according to protocol, designed to remain closed until retrieved. When it came back empty, the latch showed no signs of corrosion, no damage, no wear that would suggest mechanical failure. The mechanism had been opened correctly, following the exact sequence required to release the door. Dr. Jameson wrote that something had examined the trap, understood its function, and accessed it with precision. The implications were clear. Whatever lived at those depths possessed not just intelligence, but the ability to manipulate objects, solve problems, and interact with human technology in ways that suggested awareness and intent. The sensory experience of descending into the Mariana Trench is unlike anything else on Earth. Sunlight disappears completely below 1,000 meters. Submersible lights can penetrate only 30 to 40 feet through the water, creating a small bubble of visibility surrounded by infinite darkness. The pressure is so immense that steel cables creak and groan under the strain, producing sounds that echo through the hull like the moaning of a living creature. The temperature drops to just above freezing, cold enough to numb exposed skin in seconds if the protective layers failed. The silence at those depths is absolute. No waves, no current strong enough to hear, no ambient noise from the surface. Inside a submersible, your own heartbeat becomes deafening. Your breath sounds like wind in a cave. And in that silence, any unexpected sound feels like a violation of the natural order. Water at extreme depths should preserve organic material. The cold temperature and lack of oxygen create an environment where decomposition happens slowly. Bait placed in traps at 30,000 feet should remain intact for days, even weeks. But Dr. Jameson's team discovered that bait often vanished within hours. Cameras positioned near the traps sometimes captured amphipods and other small scavengers feeding. But the amount of bait consumed far exceeded what those creatures could eat. Something else was taking the bait. Something large enough to clear a trap in a single visit, leaving no trace except the empty container. In 2016, marine biologist Dr. Mariana Trench joined an international research mission studying the Mariana Trench. She was an experienced deep-sea researcher, having worked on projects in the Atlantic and Indian Oceans for over a decade. On her third dive into the trench, her safety beacon went offline at precisely 32,400 feet. Protocol required immediate emergency ascent if any system failed, but Dr. Trench never initiated the procedure. Her submersible continued descending. Communication was lost. Search and recovery efforts found no wreckage, no debris, no sign of the vehicle or its pilot. The official investigation concluded that catastrophic hull failure occurred, causing instant implosion that would have vaporized both the submersible and Dr. Trench. But no debris field was ever located, which was unusual. Even a catastrophic failure should leave fragments and metal shards, something that could be recovered and analyzed. Dr. Trench simply disappeared. In 2018, a commercial submarine tourism company called OceanGate proposed offering civilian trips to the Mariana Trench. They had successfully operated tourist expeditions to the Titanic wreck site and believed there was market demand for visits to Challenger Deep. They submitted permit applications to international maritime authorities in multiple countries. Every application was denied. The stated reasons varied. environmental concerns, safety regulations, insurance limitations. But no detailed explanation was provided. OceanGate attempted to appeal the decisions, arguing that they met all technical requirements and had proven safety records. The appeals were rejected without further comment. The company eventually abandoned the project and focused on other dive sites. In 2019, seismologists detected an earthquake originating from within the Mariana Trench. This was unusual because earthquakes typically occur along fault lines at the edges of tectonic plates. The trench sits in a subduction zone where the Pacific plate slides beneath the Philippine plate, so seismic activity in the general area is common. But this earthquake measured magnitude 7.1, and its epicenter was traced not to the fault lines, but to the trench floor itself, at a depth of approximately 33,000 feet. Geologists could not explain what would cause such a powerful seismic event to originate from the bottom of the trench rather than the surrounding plate boundaries. The data was reviewed multiple times, verified by different institutions, and confirmed as accurate. Something deep inside the trench had shifted with enough force to register on seismographs around the Pacific Rim. Multiple crew members from expeditions conducted between 2012 and 2016 have refused to give interviews about their experiences. Two former NOAA researchers filed reports citing psychological distress after deep-sea missions and took early retirement. One of them wrote a post on a personal blog that has since been deleted. The post said that some places are not meant to be explored. Some doors should not be opened. The researcher did not elaborate, did not provide details, but the tone suggested genuine fear rather than poetic metaphor. Then in 2020, a joint United States and Japanese expedition deployed a fiber optic camera array into the Mariana Trench. The system consisted of 48 individual cameras connected by cables, designed to remain active for 12 months, providing continuous observation of the trench floor. The cameras were positioned at various depths between 25,000 and 34,000 feet, creating a network of eyes watching the darkness. 6 weeks after deployment, every camera went offline simultaneously. No gradual failures, no individual malfunctions, just instant loss of signal from all 48 units at once. The recovery operation took months. When the array was finally brought to the surface, engineers discovered that all 48 cameras had their lenses covered. Not by sediment, not by debris, but by a biological film. The substance was analyzed in laboratories in Tokyo and California, and DNA testing revealed genetic sequences that did not match any species in global databases. The film had been applied with what engineers described as intentional precision. Each lens was completely covered, edge to edge, as if something had deliberately blinded every camera in the array. The official report concluded that the incident was an equipment malfunction caused by extreme environmental conditions. The array project was discontinued. No replacement systems were deployed. Today, the Mariana Trench remains one of the least explored places on Earth. Less than 3% of the trench has been fully mapped. The deepest sections, below 30,000 feet, are essentially unknown territory. We have better charts of the lunar surface than we have of the Hadal zones in our own oceans. This is partly due to technical limitations. The pressure at extreme depths destroys most equipment. The darkness makes visual observation nearly impossible. The distance from the surface creates communication delays and logistical challenges. But technical limitations are not the only reason exploration has slowed. Military restrictions have increased significantly since 2015. Portions of the Mariana Trench are now classified as defense research zones, requiring special authorization from multiple governments before any vessel can enter the area. Civilian research permits that once took months to process now require 3 to 5 years of international approval, moving through bureaucratic channels that seem designed to discourage rather than facilitate scientific study. When permits are granted, they come with strict limitations on depth, duration, and the type of equipment allowed. Many research institutions have shifted their focus to shallower waters, where access is easier and funding is more readily available. The case of the 2020 camera array was officially closed with a finding of equipment malfunction due to extreme conditions. The biological film that covered the lenses was noted in internal reports, but not discussed in public statements. When journalists requested access to the DNA analysis results, they were told the data was part of an ongoing study and could not be released. Years have passed. No study has been published. The genetic sequences remain unidentified, filed away in databases that only government researchers can access. Deep-sea exploration funding has undergone a quiet transformation. Civilian scientific institutions that once led ocean research now struggle to secure grants for Hadal Zone studies. Meanwhile, military contracted research missions have multiplied, operating under classified protocols that prevent public disclosure of findings. The shift happened gradually, without official announcements or policy changes, but the result is clear. Exploration of the deepest parts of the ocean has moved from open science to military control. International treaties now prohibit the disposal of nuclear waste in ocean trenches deeper than 20,000 feet. This law did not exist before 2015. The official justification cites environmental protection and concerns about long-term contamination of isolated ecosystems. But some researchers believe the real reason is different. If something lives in those trenches, something large and possibly intelligent, introducing radioactive material could provoke unpredictable responses. The treaty ensures that the deepest parts of the ocean remain undisturbed, not just by waste, but by any human activity that might trigger consequences we are not prepared to handle. Marine biologists have begun using a new term in academic papers and conference presentations. Hadal Zone horror describes the psychological effect experienced by researchers working at extreme depths. Symptoms include persistent anxiety, intrusive thoughts about being watched, difficulty sleeping, and reluctance to return to deep-sea environments. Some psychologists dismiss this as normal stress response to working in dangerous conditions. Others suggest it represents something more primal, an instinctive recognition that humans are not meant to venture into certain places. The people involved in early Mariana Trench research have largely moved on. Dr. Taishi Nakajima retired from marine geology in 2018. He now works as a consultant for private aquarium design, helping create exhibits that simulate deep-sea environments for public education. He has not spoken publicly about the scratched sensor or his theories about what caused the damage. James Cameron has not returned to the Mariana Trench, despite expressing interest in future expeditions during interviews in 2012 and 2013. When asked about plans for another dive, he declines to comment. Dr. Alan Jameson continues conducting deep-sea research, but focuses his work on depths above 25,000 feet. In a 2022 interview, he stated that there is a difference between productive science and hubris, and he has learned where that line exists. The Mariana Trench itself has shown increased seismic activity since 2015. The United States Geological Survey monitors the region, but does not publicly report on activity occurring below 30,000 feet. Seismologists who work with the data have noted unusual patterns, tremors that seem to originate from specific points on the trench floor rather than spreading along fault lines. The tremors occur in clusters, sometimes separated by months of silence, then resuming with renewed intensity. No official explanation has been offered for why these deep-source earthquakes happen or what geological processes could produce such localized seismic events. We still do not know what created the scratches on Dr. Nakajima's sensor. We do not know what James Cameron saw moving at the edge of his lights. We do not know what opened the bait trap from the outside with precision that suggested understanding and intent. We do not know what covered 48 cameras simultaneously with biological material containing unidentified DNA. We do not know what generates electromagnetic pulses in 43-second intervals from the deepest parts of the trench. We do not know whether the megafauna observed by various expeditions are simply known species that grow to extreme sizes in isolated conditions, or whether they represent something entirely undocumented, something that evolved separately from all other life on Earth. Recent discoveries in Antarctica offer a disturbing parallel, and scientists drilling through ice sheets have found subglacial lakes containing thriving ecosystems in conditions previously thought uninhabitable. Microorganisms and possibly larger creatures living in total darkness, extreme pressure, and near-freezing temperatures, cut off from the surface world for millions of years. The pattern is becoming clear. Wherever humans declare a place too hostile for life, life finds a way to exist. But not always life we recognize. Not always life that follows the rules we think govern biology and evolution. We have explored more of the moon's surface than our own ocean floor. We have sent rovers to Mars, captured images of distant galaxies, and mapped terrain on planets billions of miles away. Yet 95% of Earth's oceans remain unmapped and unexplored. Perhaps this is not coincidence. Perhaps it is not simply a matter of funding priorities or technical challenges. Perhaps it is instinct, a collective unconscious decision to avoid looking too closely at what lies beneath. The Mariana Trench exists at pressures that would turn human bone to liquid in seconds. It exists in darkness that has never known sunlight, in water that moves according to currents we barely understand. The temperature hovers just above freezing in an environment where every condition seems designed to prevent complex life from surviving. And yet, something lives there. Something large enough and intelligent enough and curious enough to interact with our machines. Something that scratches titanium, opens latches, covers camera lenses, and moves with deliberate intent through water that should crush anything more sophisticated than bacteria. In 2023, a civilian sailor crossing the Pacific reported his depth finder malfunctioning while passing above the Mariana Trench. The device showed something rising from the trench floor, ascending rapidly toward the surface. The object measured 300 feet in length and was moving at 40 knots vertically. Before the sailor could photograph the reading or call for witnesses, the device reset itself. When he reported the incident to maritime authorities, he was told he had experienced electromagnetic interference from underwater volcanic activity. The explanation was filed in official records. The sailor was advised to have his equipment serviced. No investigation was conducted, but nothing we know of lives at those depths. Nothing we have documented can survive the pressure change from 35,000 feet to the surface without its body exploding from rapid decompression. And nothing we have ever recorded moves through water at 40 knots while ascending vertically. The fastest marine animals, like marlins and sailfish, can reach speeds around 60 miles per hour horizontally in short bursts near the surface. But vertically, through the resistance of deep water, while climbing from crushing pressure to normal atmospheric conditions, nothing should be able to move that fast. The Mariana Trench is 7 miles deep. We have looked at the first few thousand feet with cameras and sensors. We have touched the bottom twice with manned submersibles, spending hours total in an environment that spans thousands of square miles. We have collected samples, recorded sounds, documented creatures we did not know existed. But 30,000 feet of darkness remain essentially untouched. What waits in that darkness is not a question we have answered. It is a question we have chosen to stop asking. Whether that choice was made out of wisdom or fear, whether it protects us from discovery or protects something else from disturbance, we may never know. The trench keeps its secrets. And something down there, in the crushing pressure and absolute darkness, keeps watching the surface, waiting to see if we will ever come back.